Hello there. The question of this election must now be, who can possibly stomach supporting, campaigning for and putting their cross in the box on the ballot paper next to the words Labour Party? So there is an entire section of UK society that, having suffered at the hands of the far right, now finds an emerging threat facing it from the far left. It's like the early 20th century all over again, with the National Socialists in Germany and the Communists in Russia both attacking the Jews. Yet in the 21st century, it now appears to be acceptable in the UK, as long as the vitriol is coming exclusively from the progressive and inclusive left, because that far left wing feels they have exclusive rights when it comes to prejudice. As the run-up to the 2019 general election unfolds, it is becoming clearer day by day that there is something rotten at both the heart and the head of the Labour Party. And it's not just focused on one issue either. The whole party now seems infested from top to bottom with anti-Semitic, terrorist-loving, UK-hating communists who harbour nothing more than a hatred for our entire way of life and of ordinary British people. The party that once proudly supported the ordinary people of the UK has now decided, it seems, to slough them off like an old, unwanted working overcoat and instead don a Mao Zedong style tunic that only speaks to the far-left extremists. And worse, this poison runs deep within the Labour Party movement at present. How traditional Labour voters can still consider giving them their vote, I just don't know. And how many more times must the Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn duck and dive when questioned on the rancid anti-Semitism in his party before the realisation dawns that he is a big part of the problem here? And just listen to what the closing submissions to the Equality and Human Rights Commission on behalf of the Jewish Labour movement says at the first paragraph of an investigation into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party under Section 20 and Schedule 2 of the 2006 Equality Act. These closing submissions are made on behalf of the Jewish Labour movement. They set out JLM's case that the Labour Party now suffers from, and is legally responsible for, endemic institutional anti-Semitism. And that comes after the opening line in the foreword that says, "The Labour Party is no longer a safe space for Jewish people and for those who stand up against anti-Semitism." And this organisation is speaking for 2,500 Jewish Labour Party members and says it makes this submission with profound sadness. And another damning line in the submission says, "Since Jeremy Corbyn became the leader of the Labour Party, he has made the party a welcoming refuge for anti-Semites." A welcoming refuge for anti-Semites? This must be the stuff of nightmares for the UK Jewish community. And it goes on to say that Corbyn has done this by publicly supporting anti-Semites and anti-Semitic tropes, amongst other rather distasteful things. And the submission states that 47% of UK Jews are seriously considering leaving the country if Corbyn's Labour gets into power, and that 87%, yes, 87% of Jews believe Corbyn to be an anti-Semite. And they also say that the Labour Party has made the political calculation that anti-Semitism is a price worth paying to maintain its internal unity. If you are a traditional Labour supporter or voter, does any of this not make your blood run cold? And then the submission helpfully places a litany of evidence into seven separate categories of Labour Party anti-Semitic conduct. A. Verbal abuse of Jewish members. B. Online abuse of Jewish members. C. Exclusion of Jewish members from participating in party activity. D. signalling by the leader that anti-Semitic views are acceptable. E. Failure to implement processes to protect Jewish members from anti-Semitism. F. Hostile response to those calling out anti-Semitism. And G. Appointment of anti-Semites to positions of power. And across the piece, the submission says it covers the whole spectrum from the overt to the thinly disguised. And one respondent gave 22 examples of such abuse that included some extremely hateful phrases and even included a threat of physical violence. And another said that the membership secretary of South Tottenham objected to 25 applications for membership from the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community and required home visits to the prospective members' houses, something no one else appears to have been subjected to. And the section on Corbyn himself, jaw-dropping stuff. The whole submission makes far from pretty reading, with The Guardian reporting that the final submissions on behalf of the Jewish Labour movement to the inquiry, which were leaked to the media on Thursday, include 70 sworn testimonies from current and former staffers and concludes that the Labour Party is no longer a safe space for Jewish people. And in their conclusion to their submission, JLM says that the party's processes and the attitudes of its leadership, agents and employees demonstrate unwitting prejudice, ignorance, thoughtlessness and racist stereotyping. Jewish members are disadvantaged by the hostile environment that this creates and by their consequent inability to participate comfortably. And in the final paragraph it says, JLM has presented its evidence to the Commission with both sadness and hope, and ends with, ultimately, JLM hopes that following such changes, the party will return to being a safe and welcoming political home for Jewish people on the left. Now, some people may be tempted to say, well, if you don't like the party, just leave it so they don't get your subscriptions and donations anymore. But that misses a fundamental point. The Labour Party is, at the moment, one part of what is essentially a two-party state. It therefore wields huge political clout, so it must be seen to be wholly inclusive, open, transparent and free from such divisive and corrupting influences. And the worrying thing is that it may have got away with shielding this internal corrosion because of that very power and influence. And that makes this all the more insidious and all the more dangerous. No UK political party should be allowed to purge a section of society from its midst based on such things as race or religion. And you have to wonder how much of this activity is downright criminal. Had just 1/10 of this been written about a smaller party on the right of centre, then the police would probably have piled in with everything they'd got. But when I take a quick look round the interweb on our Jeremy, all I see are reports of his support for very dubious organisations that do not hold much liking for the Jewish community, as well as his readiness to stand on platforms with those that would do harm to this country and to its citizens. And in 2011, Corbyn also wrote a foreword to Imperialism, a 1902 book written by John Atkinson Hobson, calling it brilliant. That book contained anti-Semitic tropes, and Hobson himself minced no words over his views of those that followed the Jewish faith. Not nice stuff at all. Can you imagine the hullabaloo if Boris Johnson or Nigel Farage had written a glowing foreword to a reissue of Mein Kampf? So I have to ask again, why would any ordinary traditional Labour voter give Corbyn their vote? And no wonder so many Labour politicians and supporters from the mainstream are queuing up to advise the electorate to vote Tory next week to ensure Corbyn never gets the keys to number 10. And the final indictment of Jeremy Corbyn and the rampant anti-Semitism he has allowed to run amok in his Labour Party is not found in his words but in his actions. When pressed for comment on anti-Semitism, he simply says there is no place for it in our society. Unless you're in the Labour Party, it appears, as evidenced by this damning submission to the EHRC. It then seems as if every day a desperate Grandpa Corbyn would rush off to give a press conference to unveil and misrepresent another Russian-leaked document as somehow proof that Boris Johnson is the bad guy, while shying away from the damning report about himself. Before declaring he's found yet another pot of gold in the depths of the Treasury so he can hand out more freebies. If only you would vote for him. All in the hope it will divert attention from the terrible state his party is in. Corbyn is the man who will do anything to get into power. I am fully expecting him to offer to pay for Christmas for everyone across the world and deliver all the presents himself. Well, at UK taxpayer expense anyway. The Labour Party of today is a far cry in terms of values from the Labour Party of the 1970s, for example, that opposed the then fledgling EU. Today's Labour Party is where the pro-EU, hyper-liberal left Marxists reside, where their systemic anti-Semitic racist bigotry is brazenly flaunted without shame, yet denied with an anger that you dare ask about it, but covered by a poker-faced mask that attempts to defy the mounting evidence against them. What on earth is going on within the depths of that party? What is driving them in that non-inclusive and non-progressive direction? How can those who work within it not hate themselves for their own hypocrisy? The truth is that the Labour Party needs to take immediate action to cull out all those responsible for this sprouting, cancerous growth within its structure and try to rediscover its working class roots. But that's always going to be hard when that very rot starts right at the top, isn't it? But it could well be past that point. It might be at the point of its imminent demise. And if unchanged, it will not be missed. And if it does not change and change fast, then it must be shut down for good. Because if we ignore the frightened voices from within the Jewish community telling us that they are being persecuted from the hard left, and in particular by the Labour Party, and that they will leave our United Kingdom if Corbyn gets into power, then we are no better than those who went about their daily business and closed their eyes to the horrors and their ears to the screams as train after train of Jews entered those concentration camps. Is that who we are as a nation? Really? Anyway, what do you think? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.